All right, Scott Walker, Ray O'Hara, back on talking about protective risk and protective future, what's on the horizon, and we're going to talk about. A lot of people are talking about this, but we have a little bit different angle, Ray. We're going to talk about vaccines and vaccine cards, but we're going to talk about the counterfeits that are out there. Counterfeits are starting to become much more prevalent and a bigger deal. A lot of people don't want to get vaccinated, or they can't get a hold of vaccine in the numbers that they need, and so maybe people we're finding that people are watering them down. We're finding that people are counterfeiting vaccine cards, the FDA vaccine cards that everybody's trying to get a hold of, so they can go to Hawaii or they can go to Disneyland or wherever. What kind of risks do these pose, Ray? What do you think will be some of the challenges when you have these counterfeits floating around in commerce?
Well, I think you have a couple of elements, Scott. One would be, of course, the corporate environment. And typically, as you know, and I know, in the corporate environment, things like this fall on the shoulders of the security function. So we can talk about that a little bit more. But then the other side of this is the public side. So now, a part-time waiter or waitress at Denny's is charged with the responsibility of looking at your Vax card and admitting you.
Yeah, determining whether it's real or fake with all
Yeah.
those security features that, oh wait, there are no security features in the vaccine card. Yeah, how are they going to do that? Well, I mean, we're laughing because it's ironic in our industry, but how are people going to be able to tell? I think you got to have a database that you can compare the name and all the information on the card with some database that's run by the government. We were talking about this before we got on the air last week, and you asked what's the number that's on the card, and
Yeah.
it's a health ID number that the government must have additional information about who's got the vaccine, right?
Well, certainly the manufacturer of that particular vaccine has some record because they have to have it to connect with you later on if there's a problem with the vaccine. But I think it's somewhat startling though that we've got this far this quickly.
Yeah.
And now, one of the mitigation factors is to have a restaurant employee be the police. And there's no alternative to that that's built into any of these regulations that we've seen, which means that if you have your own immunity for whatever reason, you can't prove that.
That's right.
If you lost your Vax card, how do you get another one? And now we see that Clear is jumping into the fray on the medical side, and in all likelihood will be the preferred provider device activity. So here in Las Vegas at the Raiders Stadium now, 56,000 people can be in attendance with their Vax card and no mask.
Yeah, we
So
saw that over the weekend. There are a lot
yeah,
of stadiums that are allowing that. I think Clear is a great service. I use Clear. You use Clear. Now, for people who don't know what Clear is, I think it's clear.com, and you can go on there and you can set up a profile. And it's kind of like right after September 11th, they had a trusted traveler program. You would go through additional scrutiny, extra background checks. Those of us that have come from the military and law enforcement, it's nothing new for us. So go ahead and look at my background all you want. You get biometrics and you get a picture. And then you kind of go through like a fast pass lane when you're trying to get on an airplane. But over the last several years, I think it's really fascinating. Clear has branched out to venues like the Raiders games or sports events and other kind of venues. And to your point, now you can upload your validated, hopefully, vaccine levels, and where you're at there. I think that's a really interesting. You remove any kind of doubt. You put that risk of making a decision about if this is an actual vaccine, if this is actual Vax card, on somebody else. Because, I don't think as a business owner, you really want to own that decision-making
no,
process.
no. And just the other day, Customs in Alaska seized, I forget what the number of counterfeit cards were, but yeah, a significant number, and that's one that just happened to get seized. And what about the ones that made it through? But that's coming from a far eastern country, and so how does that poor restaurant worker know that that's a valid vaccine that they're looking at card, or whether or not you can use a picture of one? I haven't seen anything about that yet. So,
Yeah, I've got it on my phone. I don't want to
yes.
carry it with me because I don't want to lose it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. So, it's just one more challenge in a time of major challenges around the world from several different things that we're facing today in different parts of the world. So, I think at the end of the day, for the security function, it really tells us that we have to pay attention to the world events and looking forward to how that may impact us as a security function or impact us as a security individual. And certainly back over to the corporate side, I mean, we have to be in this discussion. We
Yeah.
just have to be. There's no alternative. And people are coming back to work or they're not coming back to work. And, with this latest subject of coming back to work, it seems like now we're getting to the point where you read a little bit more about, who knows when we'll get back to work.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. And certainly people have an opinion, but there's an article in the journal today. I didn't read all of it. I read the headlines that people are getting very comfortable in the work environment that we're in today.
Yeah.
So now, then you add the vax in there and, giving credit to Pfizer where credit is due, being now approved, an
Right.
approved vaccine. Hopefully, for other reasons, that will be extremely successful. But I mean, for us as the security function, though, we have to police this in some way that's credible and objective, and not demeaning to anyone or what have you, because we're talking about medical data
Yes.
and
Yeah.
can't go out in the
PHI.
auditorium and say,
Yeah.
everybody that's got a vaccine, raise your hands. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've been on podcasts where that discussion has come up, and there are people that will be like, "Hey, that's this is medical information. I don't want to share that."
yeah,
And look, who are we to say that they can or can't? Now, an employer certainly has the ability to say you must be whatever, or you don't have to be whatever. And I think we will see this kind of transition. I don't think it's a big. Everybody's calling it the big quit here in November or whatever. That all these people are going to quit their jobs. I don't think they're quitting jobs. I think they'll change jobs. So we'll have a big rotation. The merry-go-round will spin, and everybody will get on a different horse. And we're definitely going to see that here in the Southwest. We have a very kind of conservative location, and there are people that just don't want to be vaccinated. We see that in healthcare a lot. For whatever reason, they don't want to be vaccinated, and look, that's going to be their decision, and they can make it. But rather than a big kind of these conversations are going to happen in the hallways at the water cooler, as we used to say, and these employees are going to be talking about these things, and conflict will happen over for whatever reason. They like vaccination, they're anti-vaccination, they want people to be healthy, they don't trust the government, whatever it is. There are conversations because people haven't seen each other in a year and a half, and now we're all coming back together. What are we going to talk about? Well, we're not going to talk about Afghanistan. We're going to talk about the biggest thing and the biggest elephant in the room, which is this global pandemic. And
yeah,
I think, you bring up a good point, being forward leaning, as a security function, and I also say we need to be empathetic about all these different views that are out there and be educated about what those views are, not to counter the views, just to be aware that they exist. But what can the security function do? Ahead of time? Is it training their people, or making them more aware, working with maybe health and safety and HR to have kind of these touch points or policies and procedures about screening? What can we do ahead of time as these physical security functions to be prepared for these conversations that are going to happen in the workplace?
well, we do know that many of our counterparts and friends, they're on the COVID team, and many of them are leading the COVID team. It was a great
Yeah.
opportunity to jump in, 18 months ago and try to figure this thing out. And then many of them, I'm aware of, developed databases so that, they rate their locations around the world, low, medium, high, whatever the rating is, and then have conditions in place with that, and then track that regularly or daily. So they're there already, and I think we need to continue that, but and ask some of the hard questions about what is our position going to be that we can talk about. And someone says, "No, I'm not getting a vaccination. I work here. Are you going to
Yeah.
accommodate me? Or are you going to tell me I can't come in?" And, we're certainly seeing some hard and fast rules about that, and at least discussions about that. And a lot of them will play out in the court system over the next many years, in certain challenges and what have you. So it's a tough position to be in, and the employer, just is the employer.
Yeah.
So I think we definitely have to be on the front end of this, and if we don't know answers, get the right people in the room, and get the answers that at least are acceptable. And then the employee population and the contractor population, they know where the alternatives are. So at the end of the day, as you said, it comes down to, am I going to do this as an individual or am I not?
Yes. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think this will play out over the next several years in litigation, and whatever civil judgments are returned, or if the Supremes get involved, we'll have some level of clarity, but that's not today or tomorrow, with which is where the security team is, right? They're very much in the moment. Yeah, I need a tool that I can apply right now. What is that? And unfortunately, I think a lot of businesses are kind of in this, even in a holding pattern, like you were saying earlier. Everything, even in the very near future, the rest of this fall, and even into the winter of next year, it's kind of all up in the air. Do we return to work? Do we not? Do we have hybrid? What does that look like? Are there masks? Are there no masks? I think the security teams will have to be still heavily involved in some type of screening effort as well. And what does that look like? How does that change the approach? Do we take the airport screening method and start doing things like that, where everybody has to be masked coming into the building or into the event or whatever it is? I think that's also a place where we need to be prepared. And what are the latest screening methods? I went to a business a couple weeks back, and they were doing temperature checks, and it was, here in Phoenix, Arizona, it was 103 out, and I had just walked in, and so, look, I got in, and there were no problems, but my wife is a healthcare worker, and she always, it drives her crazy why they take forehead temperature. She's like, this is ridiculous. She said behind the ear or the wrist, and so where she screens. And she deals with this all the time, Ray. So this is funny to talk about, or interesting to talk about. She deals with people who don't want to mask up in a healthcare setting, in a hospital where you have, a whole wing of COVID patients, as well as people who are going for surgeries who need to be ensured that they don't have COVID, because that will complicate things, right, or could complicate things. And they do temperature checks by the wrist, and then everybody has to wear a mask. But a lot of times she has had to call security when either people, want to vent their frustration on these folks that are just working to get people in and out of the facility. And she says that she's verbally abused on a daily basis, and I don't doubt it. But there are people that have come and described wanting to take acts of violence, not necessarily against her, but against people in the hospital.
Yeah.
And she's had to notify her security team, who doesn't sit at the entrance, by the way. And so when we talk about our security teams, our uniformed security partners are just as important in that discussion, and what is their posture and where do they sit and what do they do. And so I think we need to be mindful of that as well. Is how do you deploy them in that environment when somebody's upset? Do they respond, or are they sitting there and then they have to kind of insert themselves in the discussion?
Well, because you were there, but at ISC West, to get in, you did a risk screen,
Yep.
which was very efficient. It didn't take more than a second or two, and actually you could hardly even slow down in a line. stick your wrist out there and, off you go into your little color coded whatever they were giving out there for that
Yep.
day. But it was very efficient. And, and I think at the end of the day, we'll figure this out. It's because there's still a lot of unknowns at the moment and, misinformation, and we're dealing with that. And, how do I identify a counterfeit Vax card? You know, I don't know that. I don't know about that.
We
I
don't
have
know
no,
that yet. Yeah.
but I mean, at some point, I mean, we had to educate ourselves the other day to figure out what the MRN meant
That's right.
in the card.
We figured it out. It's that healthcare number or that health number. Yeah.
But, so maybe there's something that we could do, at least for our employee population, to give them a more credibility. But, if you want to go to the steakhouse in New York and have dinner, that's another question.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Is my picture on my phone good enough? Or, now do I have to have the clear, but then they'd have to have a receptacle to authenticate my clear identity online. So I don't know.
Yeah,
But
setting up processes though is going to be. I think this is the future, and we always talk about this, but I consider this a dress rehearsal for kind of what's going to be happening down the road in the future as well. We're a global community. We have global supply chain. We're global industries, and as people move around the world, they pick things up. This is
yeah,
a pretty serious pandemic. But you can also have regional outbreaks of the flu. You've got a team that travels someplace and one person has the flu and then it starts going through the team. We've seen that. We've seen that specifically in the military. And I think businesses need to know how to be prepared for this risk. And if you're just now talking about having a pandemic preparedness plan, it's it's not that it's too late, but like, come on, we got to get better at forecasting what these problems are going to be, and then what are the mitigation processes, and how do we continue to be do business and to be effective as a business. I think figuring those things out, it's shifting sands, right? But I think the more effort we put into developing our knowledge and good policies and procedures around that can shift with the risk is really important.
yeah, and I think you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this stuff. There's a lot of good benchmarking opportunities from
Great
companies
point.
that want to share and learn from what they've done and from the mistakes they may have made or not made. And but then back to the same issue is we have to be in the conversation. We can't wait for the conversation to happen and then they tell us what the outcome is,
That's
because
right. This is
it'll
what
fall on
security is going to do.
yeah. Well, that's our history. That's the way it works. So we
That's
need to
true.
be, in 2021, a little bit forward thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think looking 3 to 5 years out is probably not a bad thing to do now.
Yeah.
Um, and being mindful, physical security leaders specifically need to be mindful of where the business is going,
Yeah.
because they're planning, if it's a Japanese company, what do they plan hundreds of years out, right? So I'm not suggesting that the security team has to mirror that, but having a realistic understanding of this is where the risks are moving. If you are in a business that has lots of real estate, commercial real estate, lots of offices around the world, is that something that you're going to be securing in the future? And do you need to do security upgrades in mass like you used to? Or do you need to have something that's more flexible? Or do you need to let legacy systems be legacy systems and just, they are what they are? Do you need to go back to locks and keys? I think the pandemic has affected what we were talking about earlier, has affected the way employees want to work. A lot of employees enjoy this kind of remote work. There are some employees that want to have time back in the office to see other people, and then there are employees that just can't work remotely at all, right? And that's for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's the way that they deliver their services, or the way they interact with their coworkers. So I think the security professional of tomorrow really needs to be thinking about those shifting sands in commercial real estate or their office spaces, and how will employees communicate, and how will employees come together and interact, and do we need to secure things the way we've always done it? Because that's what I always say, the most dangerous phrase, and I steal this phrase, but the most dangerous phrase is it's always been done this way, and we just can't be doing things, cranking out this kind of the same old factory where we're stamping out these security programs. We've got to really try and fit them to the business. And so, I'd love to get your kind of final closing thoughts on this. But do you think business is ready to have a security leader? And I'm being very generic here, but I want to be broad. But do you think they're ready to have a security leader who has an opinion that needs to be listened to? I mean, look, a lot of security departments spend millions of dollars on their programs, and what's the ROI on that? Very often there isn't, and it's you're pushing that money into the Grand Canyon. So, how do you think businesses are ready for this?
Well, I think to some degree businesses are ready, and I think to some degree the security leaders of today and tomorrow are ready. I think sometimes the missing element is what we've talked about before, is getting into that conversation and having a valid seat at the table. And I don't, that could be at the C-suite, can be at the operations level or what have you. And I think businesses, they're realizing that there's a lot of challenges in the world that are much different today than they were many years ago. I mean, take, for example, the chip shortage. Well, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we would have said, there's a chip shortage. Well, it's drawn out to where it is today. And you go to the market today at the grocery store and you want to get your favorite whatever, and the shelf is empty because of the chip shortage. Really?
Yeah.
How could that be?
Yeah.
But it's the conglomeration of everything together that's causing some of these supply chain challenges, and they definitely are. I mean, what did we say the other day, that Ford was shutting down the F-150 for 2 weeks or something like that?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
their best-selling vehicle.
That's right.
And Toyota was doing something similar, and I think that's where the security leader of today can be much more versed in what you and I might have been years ago, because they have access to more data, and they have instant access to that data 24 hours a day. So, adding that all up and adding that together brings good intelligence data to the business. And, if this shuts down, here's what that impact will be. Or if we have to move our supply chain, or we get hit with a ton of counterfeit vaccination cards, here's our alternative to that, and I think it's always good to remember that we need to bring the data to the table.
Yes.
The business then can decide, what do they want to do with that data? They want to mitigate it, they want to ignore it, that's fine. But our job is to bring it to the table.
That's right. We're making, I always call it being risk informed, and that's really what the security leader of tomorrow needs to do. We should have been doing that for the last 30 years, but I think it's more imperative now because information drives action.
Yeah. So let's close with what you tried to steal from me the other day when I mentioned the word risk roller coaster.
Risk roller coaster. Agreed. Yes. Yeah. Well, because it is.
Maybe you said that and I'm stealing it from you.
It's okay. You can have it. Yeah, the risk roller coaster. It's up and down. The risk, and it's going to be constantly shifting, constantly changing. And I think as a security leader, we have a decision. You can either ride the risk roller coaster as a passenger I have no decisions. When the risk goes down, I just go down with it. Or when the risk goes up, I just ride it up. Or you can be forward-leaning and you can try to control where that roller coaster is going as much as possible. And that's not easy. Both you and I have been in these situations trying to control risk, and it's not easy. But I think we need to start having that seat at the table and being able to make decisions that will hopefully impact the business in a positive way and provide that risk information to the C-suite so that they can make their best decisions
Yeah.
and be risk informed themselves. So it's tricky, but I
Yeah.
would
But
appreciate talking about it.
it's a timely topic, and this might be a little bit redundant, some of what we talked about a little bit before, but it's not going to go away for a while. So we
Mm-mm.
need to we get better at it and be vocal about it, and find that path to helping the business survive.
That's right. That's right. This is really our opportunity. This is the new generation, September 11th, and which changed security on September 12th. In 2001, it changed security for forever. I would think, or at least for the the distant future. And I think this is a bit of a situation like that, where the world is paying attention, and now we can elevate with it.
That's right. Well, good discussion, Scott.
You good
Always
talking to you,
good
buddy.
to talk. All righty.
Yep.
Take care of
Yep.
yourself.
All right. Be safe.